There are places in the natural world where mercy is unnecessary, not because cruelty dominates, but because hesitation simply cannot exist. Here, survival isn't negotiated, it isn't earned through kindness, and it isn't softened by empathy. It's decided in silence. In these places, every movement is calculated. Every structure has a purpose. Every design answers a single question. Does this work or does it fail? What we're about to explore feels almost mechanical, too precise, too efficient. And yet, it wasn't built by machines. It was shaped by time. When we imagine extreme environments, we think of crushing depths, frozen wastelands, or deserts where nothing should survive. But there is another extreme, quieter, closer, and easier to overlook. A world defined not by chaos, but by stillness, by waiting, by tension stretched thin across empty space. Most predators in nature are built to chase. Speed is their answer, power is their advantage. But here, chasing would be wasteful. Movement would be a mistake. In this world, the most dangerous thing you can do is reveal yourself. Only now do we name it, the spider. Not as an insect, not as a villain, and not even as a hunter in the traditional sense, but as a system. A living design that operates with no concern for mercy, because mercy serves no function here. Stillness for most animals is a threat. Muscles weaken, energy drains, awareness fades. In nature, motion often means survival, but spiders evolved in a world where movement is expensive. Prey doesn't wander endlessly, opportunities are rare. Energy must be conserved with extreme discipline. So instead of resisting stillness, the spider adapts to it. Its body is designed to wait. Heart rate slows, metabolism drops, limbs lock into position with almost no effort. Hours pass, sometimes days. To an outside observer, nothing is happening. But inside the spider, everything is active. The web is often misunderstood. It's not just a net, and it's not bait. It's an external nervous system. Every strand is tuned to vibration. Every thread carries information. A fly brushing silk isn't just caught, it's announced. Size, direction, struggle, all of it translated instantly into meaning. The spider doesn't need eyesight here. It doesn't need sound. The web becomes its awareness. Think of it less like armor and more like surrender. The spider gives up control of space, and in return, the space speaks back. What makes this unsettling isn't the web, it's the patience. In most living systems, waiting is weakness. Resources disappear, threats multiply. But spiders turn time into a weapon. They don't rush outcomes, they don't chase losses, they wait for certainty. And when something touches the web, the decision is already made. There is no evaluation, no hesitation, only response. Scientists understand how spiderwebs transmit vibration. They can measure tension, they can map frequency. But one question remains unanswered. Why did evolution choose this path? Why not speed? Why not armor? Why not cooperation? Why design a creature so perfectly suited to waiting in a world that usually rewards action? Because this strategy shouldn't be dominant, and yet spiders exist on every continent except Antarctica, in forests, deserts, and cities. Systems like this don't just survive, they persist. And this is only the first layer, because stillness is just the beginning. As we move deeper into the spider's world, the designs become stranger, the solutions more alien, and the absence of mercy more complete. Next, we confront a problem that should have ended spiders entirely: fragility. At first glance, spiders shouldn't survive at all. Their bodies are soft, exposed, and vulnerable. No internal skeleton, no armor, no thick hide to absorb damage. One careless step, One poorly timed encounter should be enough to end them. In the natural world, fragility is usually a weakness. It limits size, it restricts behavior, it demands caution. Most animals compensate for softness with speed, strength, or numbers, but spiders do none of these. They remain small, they remain slow, and they live alone. This creates a contradiction. A creature so delicate should be constantly at risk. Every fall should be fatal, every struggle a gamble. And yet, spiders persist in environments that destroy far more robust animals. The reason isn't strength, it's substitution. Spiders replace protection with distance. Instead of meeting the world directly, they interact with it through something else, something that absorbs force, redirects energy, and keeps danger at arm's length. Silk. Spider silk begins as a liquid protein stored inside the body. When released, it solidifies instantly, forming threads thinner than a human hair and stronger, weight for weight, than steel. Not brittle, not rigid, but flexible enough to stretch, absorb impact, and return to shape without breaking. This matters because prey doesn't arrive gently. It crashes, it panics, it fights. A rigid structure would snap under that chaos, but silk yields, spreads force, and tightens in response. The harder the struggle, the more secure the restraint becomes. The web isn't designed to overpower, it's designed to outlast. What's unsettling is how effortless this process appears. Spiders don't calculate stress loads, they don't test materials. They spin exactly what they need every time, using patterns refined over millions of years. Radial lines for structure, spiral threads for capture, different silks for different purposes, each with distinct chemical properties. Some silk is sticky, some is dry, some is built to break before the rest of the web fails, sacrificing itself to preserve the whole. This isn't strength in the traditional sense, it's optimization. And spiders aren't limited to webs. Some species cast silk like nets. Others wrap prey in seconds, rotating it mid-air as thread binds every limb. Some use silk as lifelines, dropping from danger instantly, suspended in space. Others use it to build shelters, nurseries, or trip lines that extend awareness beyond the body itself. Silk becomes muscle, barrier, sensor, escape route. For a creature so fragile, spiders have outsourced nearly every risky interaction to something else. Their bodies remain soft because the world rarely touches them directly. This strategy should have limits. Liquid protein shouldn't behave like this. Materials this light shouldn't be this durable, and systems this specialized usually collapse when conditions change. But spider silk doesn't. It functions in heat and cold, in dry air and humidity, in forests, caves, deserts, and cities. Variations exist, but the principle remains the same: spin, yield, hold. Scientists can analyze silk's structure, they can map its proteins and test its tensile strength, but they still struggle to replicate it at scale. Synthetic versions lack the same efficiency, the same balance between flexibility and strength. Nature solved a materials problem that human engineering still can't. And it raises an uncomfortable question. If spiders evolved this solution without intelligence, without planning, and without foresight, what else in the natural world is quietly outperforming us? Because silk doesn't just keep spiders alive, it allows them to remain fragile, to avoid armor, to avoid speed, to avoid confrontation altogether. The spider doesn't need to be powerful, it only needs to be precise. And as we move deeper, precision becomes something else entirely. Because silk only restrains. What comes next is what ends things. Silk restrains, but it doesn't finish. For most predators, the kill is physical. Teeth tear, claws crush, and strength overwhelms. Survival becomes a contest of force against force. Spiders operate differently. They don't overpower prey, they shut it down. What they use isn't muscle, speed, or dominance, it's chemistry. Venom is often imagined as a single poison, but spider venom is something else entirely. It's a library, a moving archive of compounds, each designed to interfere with the body in a specific way. Some toxins silence nerves, others freeze muscles or disrupt the electrical signals cells use to communicate. Some begin breaking down tissue almost immediately. The result isn't always instant death. Sometimes prey stops moving. Sometimes it stops responding. Sometimes it simply becomes still. This is where spiders cross into something stranger than predation. They don't just kill, they preserve. Venom begins liquefying internal tissues while the prey is still alive or freshly immobilized. Digestive enzymes work before feeding even begins. External digestion shouldn't work. Biology isn't supposed to function this way. But spiders bypass the rules by changing the environment instead of themselves. They turn a solid body into fluid, then consume it. No teeth, no tearing, no prolonged struggle, just biochemical conversion. What makes this more unsettling is the precision. Different spider species produce different venom profiles, each tuned to their typical prey. Some venoms act quickly, others slowly. Some immobilize without killing, while others kill without obvious damage. Systems this complex shouldn't be stable. Intricate chemical mixtures usually collapse under mutation or error, but spiders maintain this diversity across thousands of species. Scientists still don't fully understand how these venom systems evolved independently so many times, or how they remain reliable across generations. Because this level of biochemical control usually belongs to laboratories, not animals. And yet it exists everywhere, in forests, in fields, in basements, and in the quiet corners of human homes. This is where the story shifts. Spiders don't behave like creatures reacting emotionally to the world around them. They behave like systems that process it. Vibration becomes information. Struggle becomes measurement. Venom becomes control. Time becomes storage. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is excessive. There is no panic and no mercy, only function. At this point, the spider stops feeling like an animal in the familiar sense. It feels like a biological mechanism, a design unconcerned with cruelty or fairness, because those concepts don't exist in its world. Only outcomes do. And that forces a larger question. If evolution can produce systems this precise and optimized without intelligence, then complexity doesn't require planning. It requires time, pressure, and endless iteration. If that's true, then spiders aren't an exception, they're a preview. Because if life can build biochemical machines on this planet under ordinary conditions, then the limits of biology are far wider than we imagine. When we step back from the details, this story stops being about spiders. It becomes about life itself. About what survives when comfort, safety, and familiarity are stripped away. About how little life actually needs in order to persist. Spiders don't rely on strength, speed, or cooperation. They don't build societies. They don't protect their young for long. They don't adapt through learning or intelligence. And yet they endure. Across mass extinctions, across climate shifts, across environments that erase far more complex organisms. They succeed because they don't fight the world, they reduce it. Motion becomes vibration, prey becomes chemistry, time becomes patience. Everything unnecessary is removed until only function remains. This is why spiders feel ancient, not because they are unchanged, but because their solutions are fundamental. Waiting, restraint, control. These are strategies older than sight, older than sound, older than fear as we understand it. And once you see spiders this way, the unease deepens, because nothing about their design is accidental. Every part reflects a system shaped entirely by what works, not by what feels acceptable. Mercy never enters the equation, not because spiders are cruel, but because cruelty requires intention, and spiders have none. They don't choose to be merciless, they simply operate. That realization forces a wider perspective. If life on Earth can evolve systems this precise, this efficient, and this alien without intelligence guiding it, then biology is capable of far more than we usually allow. Entire worlds may exist under rules just as unfamiliar, environments where patience replaces speed, where chemistry replaces strength, where survival depends not on dominance but on optimization. Places where life doesn't look like animals at all, but like processes, systems, quiet mechanisms operating beyond our emotional frameworks. The deeper we look into nature, the less it resembles stories about good and evil, and the more it resembles engineering refined by time. Designs tested not for kindness, but for persistence. Spiders remind us that intelligence isn't required for complexity, emotion isn't required for success, and mercy isn't required for survival. And maybe that's the most unsettling part. Because when we look at spiders, we aren't just seeing something alien, we're seeing proof that life doesn't need to care about us at all. It only needs to work. When we look at spiders this way, the fear begins to fade. What remains is something quieter, a reminder that life doesn't need complexity to endure, only balance, patience, precision. Spiders don't dominate their world, they fit into it. They take only what arrives, they leave no excess, no noise, no waste. In a way, they are less a symbol of danger and more a lesson in restraint. Their existence suggests that survival doesn't always belong to the fastest or the strongest, but to those perfectly shaped by their place in the world. Life that listens instead of rushes, that waits instead of demands. And maybe that's why spiders have lasted so long. Not because they conquer their environment, but because they belong to it. In the end, they don't challenge us with fear, they challenge us with perspective. If this stayed with you, there's more waiting. Subscribe and don't miss what comes next.